Here we go. Okay, guys. Hey, this is Mike Leventovich, and we have special guest here for President's Club folks with Miss Megan Wood. Megan, say hi to everybody.
Hi.
All right. And for those that don't know, tell them where you're from.
I am from Crawfordsville, Indiana.
All right. And how did you first hear about the Alliance?
I was a lead. So I bought a home. I got a lead in the mail, and I filled it out because I wanted to make sure my son was taken care of when something was to happen to me and my house would be paid off. So.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So you became a client first, and then did you jump in and go full time right away? And did you get your license in 2 days and sold 20,000 the next week, or how did you get started?
I wish. I started off part-time. So I worked at Applebee's for 13 years. So I started doing this part-time for my first year, and then my second year I went full-time.
Okay. All right. And so you've been full time for basically a year and a month and a half now. And so cash flow wise, about how much did you bank in 2019 being your first full year full time? How much did you put in the bank?
100,000.
Right at 100,000. Okay. And with that, as you're tracking and looking at this year, do you see yourself hitting the same amount or more, or how much more? What are you projecting you think your income will hit this year?
My goal is 200,000.
Okay, looking at double that. That's pretty crazy. That's an awesome goal. Okay, cool. All right, so we're giving people an idea of just kind of the pace that you're running. And with that, how many days a month would you say you're in the field?
So I run every other weekend. I run Wednesdays for 5 hours. Every other weekend I run from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Wednesday for 5 hours, and then my son is in preschool every morning, Monday through Friday for 2.5 hours, and I run one appointment every morning when he's in preschool. So I think doing the math, that's about 28 hours.
And on average, because obviously, so let's take it. So on every other week, when you're going 8 to 8, is that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you're doing that every other week, and then throughout the week, you've got the 5 hours and then a couple hours on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday. Okay. Got it. All right. So people get an idea that you're not 40 or 50 hours a week every week, but there's the week that you're on, you might put in a good, say 12 hours times 3 days. You're putting in a good 12 hours, 36 hours in 3 days. You're working a strong work level there.
And I get to be a stay-at-home mom with my boy. So
that's big. Okay. And you get to control that. That's awesome. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about one of the things that I think has made you effective as I've watched you and coached you is that you've learned to think outside the lead program. Like you still take leads. In fact, you have a GMR. How many A leads a week are coming in your GMR every week right now?
I get five A leads a week.
So 5 A leads a week coming in. Okay. Now last week, I think you splurged and you took some extra leads last week, right?
Yeah.
How many more? Two. All right. Now, all right. So now we're going to talk about the numbers. But now, you told me something earlier about those 2 extra leads. Did you even get to them?
No.
Okay.
No, I ran out of time. I'm going to have to get to them next time.
Okay. All right. So people understand like the week, because here we are. We'll tell people it's Sunday night. It's late. It's like about 10:15 here on Sunday night. You've just wrapped up your 3 days of the weekend running. Let's give people a snapshot. So about how many dials did you make?
I did 50 dials.
Okay. And how many connects?
26.
And how many appointments did we book?
25.
25 appointments off 26 connects. There's a secret to that. We'll come back to that in a little bit. All right. And of those, how many of those families did you sit down with?
I sat down with 23.
Okay. And how much business did you write from those 23 sits?
28 apps.
28 apps. All right. And how much premium came from that?
I did 15,256 annual premium.
Okay,
And
that's
I
a
still
chunk.
got more to go tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So we still got a
I'm
little bit
done.
more to tuck in. Okay. So we're going to sneak in some more and more, tomorrow. All right. So now let's kind of break this down. So when you say you're at 28 applications, um, kind of give me the breakdown. How many of those were life applications and how many of those were other products that you've written?
Okay, so I did 1 HMA, 7 hospital indemnity plans, 3 accidental, 1 critical illness, 1 IUL, and 15 life.
Okay. All right. And so for those who don't know, when you talk about the hospital indemnity plan, that's with Medico, correct?
Yes,
And the HMA is the health matching account. And the critical
right.
illness, that's who's that with?
Mutual Omaha.
Okay, so Mutual of Omaha is a standalone critical illness plan that you can write. Okay, and then the IUL, which carrier did you use for that?
Fidelity and guaranteed.
Okay, and then the accidental death policies were with who?
Mutual Omaha.
Okay, and then your 15 other life cases that you wrote, who were those with? Blend of carriers?
Yeah.
Okay,
Foresters, Mutual of Omaha, Great Western.
okay. All right, so blend. Okay, all right, so all over the map on that. So, but the key is, I think that you're aware. Oh, and any other? Did you find any annuity money or any red sheet, debt money?
I did 20,000 in a red sheet, and I got 40 ERS.
40 ERS referrals, more referrals to talk to for the next time you're out there. Okay, so I want people to see the body of work so you understand what Megan's done here in 3 days. Now we're going to get into some of the how-to. So if you're trying to say, okay, how can I do what Megan did? And the first thing is really to think about that. Yes, she took 5 A leads. Now somebody's thinking, okay, well, what other kind of leads did she take? She took 5 A leads and that was it. Well, 2 more that she hasn't even called yet. So how did she get 25 appointments booked off of 5 A leads? I mean, does she split the leads up into tiny pieces and call them multiple times and pretend like they're more appointments? No, I don't think. Is that what you're doing?
No, I don't cut them up now.
Okay. All right. So cut it twice, if it cut it in half. I don't know. Okay. So let's talk about where the appointments you came from. So the 5 A leads you took, how many of those did you turn into appointments, Megan?
3.
Okay. So that meant that you had 22 other appointments that you booked. So where did the other 22 appointments come from?
I had 3 referrals and I had 19 prior clients.
Okay, so 3 referrals and 19 other clients, so previous clients. Now, when you say previous clients, these people that you helped like the previous day, the previous week, a year out, how far out? Hi. My daughter's FaceTiming us as we're recording this for training purposes. So, all right, I had to wait for my daughter. All right. So of those 19, how many did you meet like the previous week and sell a policy to? How many were 2 weeks out? How many were a year ago?
They were like a week out. 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. So a blend of, what I did from what I sold the last time that I was out, and then the
Okay.
last time before that.
Okay.
And then I'm constantly thinking about the clients that I have and how I help them out and what else I can do for them. I'm constantly thinking about who am I going to go see next that I've already helped? Who am I going to go see that potentially needs a hospital indemnity plan? Who am I going to go see that would really benefit from a critical illness policy? Who am I going to go see that has grandchildren or children that could benefit from a children's whole life? I'm constantly thinking of what I'm going to do next.
Okay. I think that's that the fact that you're constantly thinking, that's a big tip. Like just the fact that you're thinking. Now, how do you remember your clients? Do you have a list that you carry around, or is it just literally it's in your mind, or do you have some other cheat sheet, or how are you even trying to remember who I need to call next?
I do a couple different things. I write things down after I'm there, things that we talked about in conversation. Because when I go into a home, I literally just have a conversation with them for about 20 minutes about, if they have any grandkids, or if they're, if they've ever had any cancer, or if their parents passed away of a heart attack or something. I'm getting all this information while I'm doing, just having conversation with them for 20 minutes. And so I write it down. I keep my leads from the last time I went out. So when I'm going through and doing my dials again, I have my old leads there that I already saw. And so it's kind of a refresher to me, like, oh yeah, I remember that person. Oh yeah, I remember they had grandkids. Oh yeah, I remembered that she told me that her mom passed of cancer. Because I'm asking questions when I'm having conversation with them without necessarily letting them know what I'm even doing. I'm just having conversation. Um, I talk about me a little bit. I talk about how my dad had cancer, and I talk about my son and how he's really important to me. I talk about my grandma had breast cancer. I mean, cancer is a terrible thing. I even talk about my doggy because my doggy just had cancer. Um, and so, I mean, I
Yeah,
just
you're gonna
throw
scare
this.
some of these people, Megan. They're
I
gonna be
know,
like, I think that cancer's contagious,
I
and you need to
know,
get out of our house.
I know, I know. Cancer's huge and I hate it. And this is the way I talk when I'm in the home. Like, you know, I mean, my dad had cancer, I mean, it's huge. It really is. I mean, there is very few people in this world that you will talk to that does not have cancer in their family. Very few. I don't think I've ever ran into it. Somebody's got cancer along the line. And so that's what makes it really easy to do something like a critical illness policy, because either one, their parents had cancer, or two, there was heart problems in their family. So there's your two critical illness policies.
Okay, so I think so. It starts once you've booked the appointment the very first time, even though you may not be using it to make your initial sale or what you're doing with them, just as part of you getting to know them, you're telling a little bit about them, and basically if you're using the About Me page in your warm up, and as you're learning about them, that you find out that, hey, oh, so tell me, you're hearing about their parents, and then somewhere along the way you're finding out, hey, did you just say, hey, how did they die, if they're, or how did you ask them how their health is, or how do you find out that, say, their parents had cancer? What's the question that leads to that realization for you?
Well, typically when you're doing the application, I mean, that's one of the questions that you have to ask if they ever had cancer, and then when I ask them that, I'm like, oh, have you ever had cancer in your family? I mean, like, so I mean, like, that's not technically on the application, but ask them, you know what I'm saying? Because they
Yeah.
think maybe it is on the application. So then, and then you start talking about that, like, oh my gosh, your mom died of cancer, or I mean, then because it's on the application.
Okay.
That's a good way to get into that topic without being weird.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So it's coming up on the, so you use it when it comes up on the application. So you may not get to earlier in the appointment, but you found out that they did have parents a little bit or something about their family, and then you get here and you start to drill down on those questions, just because cancer comes up on just about every application we're going to have. So you've got an opportunity to build on that. Okay.
Right.
So you're there for the primary need, but in the back of your mind, you get to that cancer question. That's a tip off or cue for you, and so then that helps you out. So now, when you find out that their parents or grandparents or whoever has had cancer, what does that lead you? What are you thinking about for your next move? Are you thinking about the critical illness policy, the indemnity policy, or how do you know based on what you're hearing what product you start to think about next?
I think about the critical illness policy. I mean, if they talk about their mom passed away of cancer or they have cancer in their family now, because if they had a critical illness policy and they were diagnosed with that, either they're going to get the check, or if they pass of cancer, then their beneficiary is going to get it. So, I mean, that's huge for a lot of people, that even some people that can't afford like a whole life, they can afford that. And so, I think, and then the hospital indemnity, mostly, I mean, if you have somebody with like a lot of hospital bills and stuff, or somebody that's in and out of the hospital, I mean, that's an amazing thing for them, because somebody sitting there at a table with an $800 hospital bill, I'm like, wow. I go, do you know, if I was here like a month ago, I could have helped you out with a hospital indemnity plan. And then you wouldn't have that huge hospital bill because you would have got paid for being in the hospital. And that's a way that you don't have huge hospital bills like that. And they're like, well, that's awesome. Like, how do you do that? I mean, people are shocked when I show them that. Like, people are shocked. They're like, so you're telling me if I go into the hospital and I'm there for 6 days, this company is going to pay me? I'm like, yeah. I mean, like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? I mean, I would love to get it, but I'm not old enough yet, or I'd be writing it on myself. I've wrote everything else on myself. So, I mean, if I was old enough, I'd love to get the hospital indemnity plan, because I think it's huge. And, I mean, a lot of people on Medicare out there, they still have like their max out of pocket. And so if they go into the hospital and they have to pay $127, this Medico pays them, and they can use that money however they want, whether it was to pay that, or to pay bills or whatever. I mean, there's just no stopping to how much we can do to help out a family. There's really not, even if they can't afford much. I think I wrote a hospital indemnity plan to one of my clients, and their premium literally was $5.
Okay.
So people that don't have any money, you can still help them out. I mean, there's still something that you can help them out with. And I think that's amazing.
Okay. So you're thinking critical illness policy, you're thinking indemnity policy. Those are two of your big things when you're finding out about the health side. Now, you've written a number of Medicare Advantage or Medicare supplement policies.
Yeah.
What's the thought process, or how do you know when it's time to bring that up? What are you looking for that makes you think I need to ask about this?
Um, I think really the hospital indemnity plans kind of go into play with that, because if you have a client that is, I mean, they have huge hospital bills. I mean, it makes you wonder what kind of, Medicare they have. And that's kind of tricky, because, I'll ask them, well, um, how much do you guys pay for, Medicare or whatever? But then you have to actually leave and then come back to do that appointment. So after, I mean, I just kind of go with the questions and see kind of what they got. I tell them, I represent Humana, I represent several other carriers, and then you have to set an appointment to go back. So the Medicare is kind of tricky, because you can't do it while you're there for a life policy.
Okay, so you got to lean on some rules there. You got to know what the rules are. When do you call Ivy? Do you call Ivy for help when you're there on the client the first time, or do you just leave because you can't talk about it too much and then book the time to come back? Or when do you call Ivy in a situation like that?
So I call Ivy typically, like, if they show me, what they have and everything like that, I call Ivy, and, sometimes I'll even take a picture of like their card. And, I got their medications. I want to make sure I write their medications down. So when I go home and set up a time to go back, I can then look to see what we have that would offer them something better.
Okay. So now with that, so now we've uncovered another need. So you're thinking about, you find out they have Medicare and Medicare Advantage. You take a picture of their card. You find out what the prescriptions are. And so that's another opportunity you might uncover. I don't want to assume anything, but I think most people here know how to find money, or they've heard people talk about how to find money. So when you find annuity money, are you using the green sheet? Are you booking an appointment with Chris, or what do you talk to me about what you're doing when you're finding that they have money? What's your strategy there?
So I fill out the green sheet. Always, when I'm there for a life insurance appointment, one of the questions that I started asking that's really helped me out a lot is, what does your wife have, or what does your family have if you were to pass away tomorrow? I mean, what do they have? I mean, do they have life policies to lean on? Do they have a 401k? Do they have an IRA? Like, what do they have if you were to pass away tomorrow? And so that I like that question, because therefore you're not being nosy about just wanting to know, what do you got? What kind of money you got? I mean, it's a different way of asking the question, and I think that's helped me out a lot. And then I always set up an appointment with Chris. I look at his Simply Book Me page, see when he's available, and I bam the people so I can go back. And I typically try to do that as soon as I possibly can. But I just kind of ask questions, as like the 20 annuity questions that you sent me. I've been reviewing over those. So those have helped me out a lot, just to see what their money looks like. I mean, are they losing money, or do they talk to go ahead.
So for those that haven't seen the 20 power questions for annuities, we've had training on that. So that's another tool somebody can reference without us going into that now. So now I think hopefully people are seeing that you're not scared to leave any stone unturned that you may bump into. And you may not get to all of these things in one appointment, but you're getting to a few, and then sounds like you're plotting your next move. So now let's say you've gotten the first application done. So say you've done a life application, and you've identified that maybe you should be talking about the Medico. Talk about, what are you saying now that the life app is written, to come back and talk about Medico with them?
Okay, so after you write the life application, what their health is like. If they've been into the hospital, if they've had surgeries, so what their health is like. And I'll just ask them. I'll be like, have you guys ever heard of a hospital indemnity plan? They're like, no. I go, okay, so what this is, I go, we just contracted with Medico here recently. I mean, they've been around for over, 80 years, but it's something that I've helped out a lot of my clients with, and it's helped them out significantly if they're going into the hospital. So the way it works is if you're in the hospital, let's just say from anywhere from 6 days to 31 days, and you pick your amount, Medico's either going to pay you anywhere from $100 a day up to $600 a day if you're in the hospital. So if you were in there for 6 days, then Medico would write you a check anywhere from $600 to $3,600 every day you were in there. I go, and then we all know ambulances are expensive. They write you a check for that as well. Urgent care, they write you a check for that as well. So it's a way that while you're in the hospital, you're still getting paid. So you get paid if you go into the hospital. You get paid if you have to take an ambulance. And, that's huge, because, I mean, and I'll explain it like this. I mean, So say your wife is a stay-at-home mom and you're the only one working, and something happened to you and you're in the hospital, and you've been in the hospital for a week and you're not working because you're in the hospital. How are you going to get the bills paid because you're not working?
Mm.
And
Okay.
so that's huge, because while you're in the hospital, you are getting a check from Medico that then will be able to pay for your bills while you weren't there.
Okay. Now, time out. So are you doing this right there after you've done the Life app, or are you doing some of this and saying, we need to talk about this and we need to book a time to come back? How much of what you just went through is happening there, right there when you're filling out that first application?
It depends. It depends on the appointment. So, and it depends on if I got my next appointment coming up. But if I
Okay.
feel like I need to come back, then I will set up a time, to review everything we've gone over, or something I didn't finish. I use that. And then I go back to talk to them about something like that. And then when I go back, I refresh their memory about, how we were kind of talking about what would happen if your husband went into the hospital and he's the only one working, or what would happen if you got pneumonia and you were in the hospital like you got pneumonia last year. I mean, like, you know what I mean? I'll refresh their memory if I go back. But if I got some extra time and I don't have my next appointment, I don't have to leave there for another 30 or 40 minutes till my next appointment, then I'll bring it up then.
Okay. All right. So let's say you're running tight, because like what I want to show people is how you're booking stuff in, and whether it's this specific need or maybe it's the Medico or maybe you uncovered something else. So let's say you're racked and stacked and don't have enough time because you've got to get out to the next appointment. What are you
Hmm.
saying to book that next appointment into your next day of running appointments?
I do a couple different things. So one of the things that I just did, um, here the other day, is I knew I wanted to talk to them more, um, about different options like the hospital indemnity and stuff like that. So I was running really behind, and what I did, because I knew I wanted to go back, was our ERS sheet. I told them, I go, this is really important because there's billions of unclaimed life insurance money. And so I'm going to leave this here with you guys. What is a good time for me to come back tomorrow so I can pick this up? And I kind of wanted to go over things with you. So they filled out the ERS. I came back the next day. They had the ERS done. And then I was there to pick it up. So I went over what I needed to, and I sold 2 hospital indemnity plans.
Okay. So in some
So
cases
the reason
you'll book for the next day, and then sometimes it sounds like you'll book into the next week. So let's say you're not going to book it for tomorrow. Talk to me. What's it sound like when you're booking that follow up into the next week?
Okay, so if I'm booking up the follow up into the next week, I'll say, once I know that you guys are approved, I'll call you, and then I'm going to come back over and go over everything with you. So I will know that you're approved here in about a week. And so when is a good time on Tuesday after I know that you're approved, and I'll come back over and go over everything with you.
Okay.
Because it typically takes that long to know they're approved, or it might even take a day to know that they're approved, but I've already set the appointment.
Okay. So you're basically telling them whether you're gonna call them to tell them you're approved, or you're telling them I'm coming over in person to tell them that they're approved.
I call them.
Okay.
So they get approved. I call them, let them know that they're approved, and then I say, I just wanted to remind you guys that I wanted to go over a couple things with you on Tuesday. So Tuesday at 4 o'clock, I'm going to swing by and go over everything with you.
Okay. Got it. Okay. All righty. So you're bam bamming for the next day or two, or you're bam-famming an approval call. And then from the approval call, you're bam-famming the actual appointment to go back and sell the next product.
Exactly. Yep.
So when you say, hey, I had 50 dials and I talked to, I talked to 26 people and booked 25 appointments, is because several of those calls that you made were calls that are previously bam from previous clients. I think that's a secret, and people need to know that. That's $1 million tip right there. So you're bam-famming when you're going to call them to talk about their approval, and then you're using that to also set the next appointment. That's huge right there. Okay. So I think we've covered a lot of ground for people listening. I mean, we've talked about how are we identifying other needs, what are the different scenarios we're thinking about, how are we booking that next appointment, and then from there it carries forward. So Megan, I think this is going to help some people being specific like this. I'm sure we could get more time. For those that are wanting to get around Megan, I know she's going to be down in Lakeland for the training that Andy does on the 4th and 5th, specifically that full day boot camp on the 5th. That Thursday of March. So hopefully you want to learn more from Megan, tune in, catch her there or at the Indianapolis Hotspot. So everybody's listening. Hey, thank you, President's Club. Thanks for putting this together. You guys take care.
Thank you.
Okay.